Very good morning and welcome to That's Football. This is your latest football transfer news. We're going to be talking Chelsea moving ahead for a Moises Caicedo deal from Brighton. Also a bit of a shock. Chelsea player could be moving across London to Arsenal. I want to scrutinise and talk and give an interesting, what I think is interesting, spin and perspective on this Newcastle sponsorship deal for their shirt. It's basically funded by Saudi Arabia. Some people say we've got sports washing, it's just Manchester City 2.0. I actually disagree. I actually think that Newcastle will not be pulled up on this and will not face any issues with it. But we'll talk about that in a bit, because obviously this is the way football's going, and it's a challenge for Liverpool, Manchester United, Spurs, Arsenal that don't have that super wealth. How do you compete when not only do they get bought, but then they get all these sponsorship deals that boost their revenue, which means they can boost their spending. So we'll talk about that as well. And also, it is the Man City Champions League final tonight. We'll be covering that on the channel. I'll be doing a watch along of that. Man City, some of their players been linked with moves away. Bernardo Silva, Riyad Mahrez, Gundogan. What would that mean for Pep? And where would he go for replacements? He's been quite good at evolving that team in recent years. But let's hit the headline story. So Chelsea are currently the leaders in the race for Moises Caicedo into the midfield. Obviously, they wanted Ugarte. They missed out on him. They probably would have been favourites to buy Declan Rice if they hadn't messed that deal up over the last few months and basically switched Rice off from what would have been a move to his dream club. And we know that Mason Mount's looking to get out of there. So Chelsea need midfielders, and Caicedo is seen as the player that they're most likely to get. They have a relationship with Brighton, of course. They bought Cucurella from there last summer. Colwell is actually there on loan, I think, at the moment, and they're looking to do a permanent deal there. So transactions, negotiations, relationships exist between Brighton and Chelsea. Obviously, Graham Potter came in there at the start of the season as well. It's the sort of deal that you can see Chelsea getting done because they need to get some status deals done. I'd love Caicedo at Manchester United. I'm sure Liverpool fans wouldn't mind him. I'm sure some Man City fans wouldn't mind him. I think Arsenal really do want him and tried to get him in January. And the dream for Arsenal, of course, would be to get Declan Rice and Caicedo. And what an improvement that would be to a team that pushed Man City in a title race for 8 months of the season. So look, there will be competition there, but Chelsea traditionally tend to win these sort of races when they're at the front, and if they didn't get hold of Caicedo, where do you go next? Rice looks unlikely. They didn't get Ugarte. Where are they going to go next? So Caicedo to Chelsea at the moment looks like the best bet if you're a Chelsea fan in solving your midfield problems. And look, I've just said there, Basuma went from Brighton and it didn't work at Spurs. Things can not work out sometimes, but this is a midfielder a lot of clubs are looking at. I know for a fact United, we know about Arsenal, and it would be an impressive deal for Chelsea. And I think that they were always looking at Caicedo and Ugarte, so it makes it even more important that they get this Caicedo deal over the line. I think it's going to be a really interesting test of Chelsea's current prowess, because as I say, traditionally you'd expect Chelsea to win these sort of races, but they don't have Champions League football. They've had a really unstable year. And if you look at Chelsea and you look at Mount and Kovacic and many others, that's an example of how good players can perform badly in a bad situation. So there is a risk for the player. There is no European football, but also there's reward. Pochettino's there. The aim will be to, you're starting at a low ebb. It's a bit like United when Ten Hag came in. You don't have to do an awful lot to be appreciated. So it's Chelsea. It's still Chelsea that can remunerate you and give you opportunities. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I think if Chelsea get Caicedo over the line in the face of the competition that's there, it'll be a very impressive deal. And at the moment, they are apparently there with that. So let's keep an eye on it. It's certainly a deal that is going to happen quickly, because Brighton are a well-organised club and they want to move their players out quickly so they can move on with their replacements quickly as well. So Brighton's efficiency will be beneficial for whoever is buying players from them this year, because they want to get things done. And obviously that's beneficial for Chelsea. You've got a huge summer ahead of them. So they're favourites at the moment. What are your thoughts on that? Just on Chelsea, Havertz has been linked to Real Madrid. Now, I would say more extraordinary, he's now being linked to Arsenal. There's clearly a player there in Havertz. I remember when he was in Germany at Leverkusen, and it was Leverkusen, I think. And Real Madrid were looking at him, United. He ended up going to Chelsea, scored some good goals, but again, another player that this year has been absolutely dreadful. You have to take that on board. I mean, Mount's been dreadful, Kovacic has been dreadful, Havertz has been dreadful, Sterling has been dreadful. So, look, you can't individualise it too much. There's clearly a good player there, but the fact that Arteta and Arsenal would look at him and see a good player there is quite interesting. He's massively underperformed, and the thing is, then it's just how much you pay for a player that's massively underperformed, and there is red flags there. But Man United want Mount, Man City want Kovacic. If Arsenal end up with Havertz, you can't just say, well, Havertz is crap when the other two have been crap the last year or so as well. I think there are players there at Chelsea with a lot more potential than they've shown. I can't see him ending up at Arsenal, though, if I'm being honest. But where will he end up? It'd be interesting. Interesting indeed. And Manchester City, Bernardo Silva linked to PSG. Gundogan still being linked to Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and a few other clubs, even Saudi Arabia, and Mahrez being linked with there as well. They would be three significant losses for Manchester City. I mean, I think Pep Guardiola and his recruitment team are so well skilled and versed that they'd have three really good players to come in and replace them. But I do think Bernardo Silva and Gundogan are incredibly important players in that Manchester City side. And Mahrez, he'd start for every other Premier League club. He's that good. So they would be three players that you just can't see Man City letting those players go. But Bernardo Silva's want to go before. Gundogan is out of contract at the end of the month, and Mahrez may well just feel that at his age and what he's done in the Premier League, it's time for him to move on. He might even fancy Saudi Arabia. So there could be some outgoings for Man City this summer, and significant outgoings. I mean, I would argue that losing Bernardo Silva and Mahrez and maybe Gundogan is more significant than losing Sterling, Jesus and Zinchenko. So there may be hope for the rest of the Premier League yet, but the kicker is that God knows what Man City have got lined up to come in and replace them, because let's be honest, they've gone from replacing three important players last summer to winning a potential treble. So there we go. Let's talk about this Newcastle shirt deal. So basically, Newcastle are about to sign a deal, have finalised a 25 million a year front of shirt deal with the leading Saudi Arabian events company Seller. Obviously, they're owned by Saudi Arabia, so this is a shirt deal with a Saudi Arabian company which may well have links to the people that own Newcastle. Now that in itself is not a problem. That's not a problem. If Man United got bought by Al Thani and had Qatar Airways on the front, that's not the problem. The problem that Man City have been accused of is overinflating their revenue, overinflating their sponsorship deals, and this is something the Premier League will look at in relation to this Newcastle deal. Now, Newcastle's last shirt deal was around 6 million. It's now going to be 25 million a year. That is a massive increase, but they can cover it off by the fact that they're now a Champions League club. I personally don't have a massive problem with this. I don't think Newcastle are heading down the potential route of Man City and FA Chargers, because Man City quite clearly inflated their sponsorship deals and a lot of other things over their worth. Newcastle already have a huge fan base and always have had a huge fan base, and they are in the Champions League, and they seem to be trying to do things with money, but as legitimately as they can. And ultimately, the Premier League will have to sign this off, and I think that they will, because Tottenham's current deal at Spurs is about 40 million a year. I think Arsenal's is also around 40, and I think Chelsea's is around 40 million. Now, Man United's is around 50, Liverpool's is around 50, and then Manchester City's deal is nearly 70. I mean, how are Man City having a bigger shirt deal than Man United and Liverpool? I mean, by 20 million. So, and I'm going on these reports from a site called Statista, so they might not be completely accurate, but there's your problem. Man City with a £70 million shirt deal and Man United and Liverpool with 50. I mean, that's where your problem is. I think Newcastle going from 6 million to 25 million a year is absolutely fine, because you can say it's about the Champions League, and it's still 15 million a year lower than Arsenal, Spurs and Chelsea. So I think it will be fine. And I think people are not really understanding the rules that you can have Qatar Airways on your shirt if you're owned by Qatar, but what you can't have is them giving you £100 million a year for it, when everyone else is getting 40 or 50. So that's where Man City have had their problems in the past, is they overinflate their sponsorship deals compared to the size of club they are. Whereas Newcastle, I think, are pitching it about right. So that's my thoughts. Anyway, get your comments in below on that. Smash a like on the video. I'll speak to you all soon.